But what I would like you to start with is just to get to know each other, because we're in this lecture theatre. You're probably sitting with somebody that you already know. But what I would like you to do is to pick up one of these cards that you have on your table. Flick the card open, find a friend, open the card, and spend some time answering these questions and talking to each other and listening to each other's story. Wow, okay, you're a very obedient audience. Well, thank you so much for engaging in sharing your stories, sharing quite personal things. And I wonder, what did it feel like for you? And hopefully for our audience online, they've also had a chance to share and discuss and talk about things quite personal. What was it like for you? What was it like to say things to people maybe you've not met before?
I hated it. I found it really uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
I was looking at the cards, trying to find one that I would happily talk to a stranger about. And there was nothing. But we got through that discomfort thanks to my excellent conversational colleagues.
Conversational buddies. Yeah. So it was quite uncomfortable, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely fine, and that it should be. You have been asked to reveal something quite personal to somebody maybe you've never seen before. What about anybody else really likes this sort of thing? Or anybody enjoyed? You all had smiles on your faces, and you are now a bit daunted looking at me. Maybe you were talking about something else, which is absolutely fine as well.
Then I would say it was really interesting because actually I've done something I know, and I think you need to realise how day-to-day basis you're quite functionally doing the work, but actually we don't start to just have conversations about real things or have perspectives about things.
Yeah, brilliant point. Somebody we know from work. We know how to work together. You guys have worked together for such a long time in a very close working relationship. But what about this quite personal question that you are learning something quite intimate about somebody in this sort of, quite hierarchical environment that we're sitting in, with the authority here asking you to perform this quite intimate task. Anything else? What was it like to listen to people? How did you feel as a listener? I saw you were all engaging, so I think you were really trying to give the listener that comfort. But what was it like to hear the stories?
In a practical sense, it's quite difficult. It's not really a space designed for 50 groups of people to be chatting and hear each other clearly.
Yeah, so quite difficult in this sort of environment, isn't it? You would probably prefer to be in a cafe somewhere in the corner, chatting about things like this. Anything else that springs to your mind about this sort of very personal engagement that we are asked to do?
I think structure was actually quite helpful. If you struggle with talking to strangers or making small talk with people in general, then just having specific things that you've been instructed to talk about guide you through it.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, isn't it? Some sort of maybe a coping mechanism that we develop. So we have a structure so we don't feel surprised. We look for some comfort in the uncertainty. So for me, listening, and as Alistair already pointed out in his introduction, listening is an important activity, and active listening is something that sometimes we don't engage with. We don't look at people's face, we don't look at people's arms, at them taking down of their glasses or stroking their hair, feeling nervous. But in education, listening to each other, listening to our students is something that we really need to build into how we perceive the world of education. Building those relationships, building the trust. That's something that I will talk to you today. So yes, so asking questions is great, as long as we listen to the answer. Now I'm going to challenge this slide, these beautiful drawings produced by one of my colleagues. I'm going to say that listening is great as long as you also listen to the question, not just the answer. And I'm going to pose you a question that gave me a massive light bulb moment early in my career. And it was a story from Disney and his approach to run his venture. And the question is, and some of you will know this question, that he asked his employees, what will you do when visitors of the amusement park ask you, what time is the 3 o'clock parade? So what will you do? What would you say? If I come to you and you are employee of Disney and I'll come to you and I say, what time is the 3 o'clock parade? You'll probably look at me and say, you silly woman. You stupid. You haven't read the instruction. You are asking this. It's 3 o'clock. Of course, it's obvious. Yeah, it's obvious. So when you go to the doctor and you are scheduled maybe for an operation, and the doctor says to you, the op will take place at 2 o'clock. They talk you through the procedures. How many of you maybe have been in this situation and were tempted to ask, what time is the op going to happen? It's 2 o'clock, I've told you. Same scenario may be repeated when you put a slide on in your presentation and you say the deadline for the assignment is the 20th of May at 5 p.m. You finish your lecture and there is a group of students who come to you and they say, when is the deadline? And the slide is still up there. What do you do? What's your instinct? You get angry? Students. It's up there. It's on the slide. So what are these people really asking? Of course, the stressed woman with her children and maybe a mum on a wheelchair wasn't asking what time is the 3 o'clock parade. She was probably asking, where does it start? Is there a toilet? Is there some refreshment? How long is the parade going to be? The same, the student who comes to you to say, when is the deadline, is probably not asking when the deadline is. He's probably trying to tell you, I've never done an assessment in the UK before. This is my very first essay. I don't even know where to start. I don't even know how to prepare. So looking behind the questions is something that really, really enlightened me in this talk that I once attended about Disney. And then there is another caveat. People often say something completely different that they do. So when you ask the students what you want, they will tell you what they want, you will implement it, and they still don't do it. And you get really angry about it. Well, we asked them what they wanted, this is what we put in place, and they are still not doing anything like that. So what people want and what they need, what they hope and what they tell you, is something completely different. People's behaviors and how they project about what their implicit needs are very different. And it's not only about students. Humans, we don't know. If somebody asks me, what do you want? If I want to go and buy a kitchen and they ask me, what do you want? I said, I don't know, maybe something nice color, something like that. I have no clue what I want. But I may have a clue about what I need, about how I cook, whether I like cooking or not, how much time I spend in the kitchen. And so these kind of questions and answers gave me a lot of thought about the implicity of how we engage in questions and answers with each other, but also with our students. And so, let's have a meaningful engagement. But with whom are we typically engaging with? These are our students. How beautiful they are. When we are planning our engagements, we typically engage with dehumanized and aggregated data. Data that has lost the story on the way to our systems. This data represents, for example, my cohort or a snapshot of a student. And so the challenge for us as educators, in many occasions when we are parachuted to deliver a module on a program that we don't know at all, or when we are expecting students to arrive and we can't really imagine them, all we can refer to is this. How can we have a meaningful engagement with the data that has lost the story on its way? And so in my practice, I have reached out to human design principles. And I did leave the management school and walk to the north of the campus, to Laika, to ask them, do you think design can give something to education? Can design as a discipline equip us with something that is more human-centered, that will help us ask better questions, that will help us listen differently. It was really by coincidence that I came across a few articles written about design in education. I didn't quite know what to imagine. Maybe like yourselves, you imagine a beautiful fashion garment or beautifully designed car. Design is something much more than aesthetics. I was very fortunate to be mentored by Professor Rachel Cooper, who gave me a lot of confidence and said, go for it. I believe that design principles can really change how we view education. So for me, design has developed some sort of a view of being more intentional, always thinking about the human in the center, not just the student, but the human. It helped me to think about problems in a different way and not jump to conclusions straight away. It helped me to define the problems in a much more meaningful way. I became a learner again, and I learned a whole new discipline, and I set myself a goal to become an educational designer. With the help of a lot of external networks and generosity of this community, I feel that I have learned how to design with rather than design for. There's a little quote from a famous designer in our field from the 60s, who just basically pointed out that everybody designs. You all are designers. Everybody who is changing a course of action to something better is a designer. And I always think, if you do it with empathy and listening ear and consideration, you are designing a meaningful engagement and meaningful experience. Design for me has become my new capability that gives me a mindset of collaboration that is underpinning the notion of co-creation, co-creating, designing with, working with not only colleagues, but also my students, and putting the empathy in the center of everything I do, trying to feel what my students feel and trying to feel what colleagues and people around us feel. So this sort of mindset of collaboration, empathy and co-creation gave me some sort of confidence to think about education in a bit more holistic way. And students themselves, from this wonderful quote that I found on LinkedIn from one of the learning designers from the University of Leeds, students themselves remember moments when they were treated as humans. They remember where you tried to position your knowledge and learning in a very accessible way. But most importantly, they will remember when they were other humans and when they had the human interaction with other people around them, with other colleagues, with other peers. So all this has given me a lot of light bulb moments, and this picture has been shared with me by one of my students, and I think he probably sent it to me on purpose to say, Radka, think about these light bulb moments throughout the education journey. I've started also exploring that sort of all the sense of belonging that we talk about a lot. And in all this exploration, a lot of frameworks that we read, there's a lot of words, a lot of buzzwords that you will all recognize. And I started really thinking about the concept of mattering, of people, when people matter. When we matter, we feel we belong. We feel much more connected to not just learning, but to the whole world, to life. I was very much inspired in my life by Brené Brown and her work on self-efficacy, on being enough. And if you haven't seen the film Barbie, please watch it, because Ken also always felt he was the second one and wasn't enough. And the song from the Barbie film, I was tempted to play it, but it's quite cool, But not being enough, you are not enough. And in that authority, sort of power, educational paradigm sometimes, maybe we feel we are not enough, and maybe our students also feel that sort of imposter syndrome. So the concept of mattering and the concept of transformation, transformative learning, something that really stuck with me. I also looked at the framework of the Office for Students about what they mean by the student engagement, by engaging, building a culture with student engagement. And actually, these words that they put forward, these concepts, really resonate with my practice as well. Every engagement needs to have a purpose. You need to understand, not just you, but also your learners, what's the purpose of engaging with each other. And it's not just about, I'm here to teach you something. That's not always the purpose of why we're together. It's also about being inclusive and finding different ways of engaging different voices, not just having student ambassadors who are the most vocal ones, but engaging those who are more silent. The timely engagement, the engagement that is scheduled so that the time is somehow meaningful to the engagement as well. The last two ones are very important to me, about transparency, about when we engage, so that the students understand what are we going to do with the information they have imparted on us, they have shared with us. What are you going to do with these personal stories that you have just shared with each other? The same that students want to know, and they want to feel empowered to become agents and act. So in my world, I have sort of for myself decided these three very simple principles of how I can achieve human-centered student engagement. And it is very much, again, based on everything that I've already shared with you, all those design principles that bring the head, the heart, and the hand together, so that I, as a designer, also become a co-learner in this education process. And we like to jump. I have a lot of jumping pictures. Students love to jump. So the first principle is about the trust. You know, students need to trust you, that you care. How can you demonstrate that you care? It needs to be an authentic engagement. They need to trust you. So how can we develop the trust? I feel that students need to feel that you also feel, that you are also a human, that emotions are nothing to be embarrassed about. The emotions are a part of our transformational education. It's not just about intellectual enhancement. It's also about our emotional growth of our students and ourselves. And I feel that students need to believe you, that you listen, that you are not just listening for the sake of listening. I'm going to just share a few examples from my practice with you about how I feel I have managed to achieve that. So the sort of notion of trust in design is when you are really intentionally thinking about what you are putting in front of the students, what you are preparing, so the intentional act of trust. So how can you trust? How can they trust? What's this again? You know, how can you engage? So this is what we would normally look at before students arrive on campus. Don't even look at it, don't worry. It's just a snapshot of some numbers. So before my students arrive, I'm usually told, you will have 65. 65, so okay, I'll have 65. So how do I care for this? Again, that sort of dehumanized data. It's very difficult for us. And I thought, I'm not happy with this. I don't want to imagine this when I'm thinking about welcoming my students in the intro week. This is simply not good enough. I don't want to be able to click on it and look OS, EU, home, domicile. It means absolutely nothing to me, this aggregated data. I know this data has a purpose, and I'm not challenging our systems. However, I think it's important to look behind. A very simple practice that we have introduced on my program was to develop a Padlet board before students arrived. This is the same data as you saw here. It's slightly different, right? So in this data, you can see that I'm interested in where are you coming from? What's your hometown like? Show me the picture so that I can imagine I'm there. How did you spend your summer? What's your favorite food? This is the data that we need for meaningful engagement. And we continue the board throughout the year with the students. Very simple. The board is a living memory for all of us. The board is still there. Many students who are now, well, look, 2020, they graduated a long time ago, still engage and still remember these snapshots where we were at the end of the course reflecting on MSc management in one word. Let's reflect on our learning outcomes. Another way, also in the intro week, when I'll always think, how do students absorb our program handbooks? The information, the 70-page document that you think is so good, full of words that nobody understands. And I ask my students to take the handbook and rehearse it back to me. Nobody came with another handbook. And there was one group one year who sang. They sang a bit of the handbook. And I thought, how cool that they sing. And they sang about student support and how confused they were with the student support. And so that inspired me, for example, to think, handbook, nobody reads. You get stressed that nobody reads it. So let's do something better. So this is old as well. We did a little 4 sort of section thing where I didn't sing, don't worry. I just recorded to say, in this chapter, you will find information about when you are ill, what to do, when you want an extension, when you are not coping. Very simple guide that was just put on Moodle. And all of a sudden, our support team started telling me, we have no emails anymore. Nobody's coming to see us. I'm like, yes, very good, because they probably just listen to me 3-minute summary of what they can find in the handbook. Another most important engagement with the trust is also involve the cohort in that sort of co-creation of the information. And I've always been very lucky with students taking agency and charge and bringing together their own learning for the next generations. Hey, what's up? And they say, it's us, your predecessors.
Hi everybody, my name is Chris. We tried to make a video to kind of help you get through this whole online learning experience.
So involving the sort of outgoing students with the messaging, and we did every year the message was different. One year it was a letter, one year it's a video, it's up to the students. But they wanted to leave that legacy, the legacy for the next cohort. So it's not just us that we engage, it's not just student to student, but developing those sort of student communities has been essential. The feeling side, the emotional side of the engagement, again, we get very emotional when we see how many clicks, who has clicked, how many students have seen on Moodle, and we are watching it. And you go, oh, 2 of them, only 2 of them. Another piece of data that we engage with. What about something like this? I love this exercise that we always do at the beginning of the year, in the intro week, when we ask the students, when do you start working on your assignment? When we give the assignment to you, or one day before, and they have to line up. And they line up, and I do this, and we laugh. But the physicality of showing that some people simply have a preference to start really early and work for a really, really long time on an assignment, and some people will be just last-minute buddies, and that's okay. This is not a judgmental exercise, but in a physical way, we can have a conversation. We can say, oh, why are you so last minute? Or what's your mechanism? Maybe you have a coping mechanism, some sort of a structure to it. What about thinking about a student and their day in life? What's a day in life like? Not just thinking about them as a student who sits right here in front of you, but a human who may be a carer, who may be a brother or a father in their other life. Students are humans, and in the activities that I've engaged with them in creating their personalizations of who they are in their communication to me, it may seem a bit childish to you. And I do struggle in the management school paradigm introducing methods from design like this. However, helping students express themselves through material and through telling me this is who we are. So this is a representation of a student on an MSc management. A group of students represent together a persona that communicates to me slightly different message. It communicates to me who they are as a person, what their dreams are, what their family is like, what their aspirations are. You may think, why is she interested in that? All this information really enables me to make much better decisions about how I present my education aims, how I engage with them in the learning. Many light bulb moments occurred when I was encountered with these persona representations, when I suddenly realized how students struggle with the word career, how petrified they are about their family pressures. Our Asian students revealing that they are the only child and everything in their family relies on their success. This puts a totally different perspective on how you structure your career engagement, your activities on the program. The acknowledgement that the emotions are okay to have. This is piece of data. This data shows an engagement of a student for 6 months period on the program. And they are showing me their ups and downs, and they are revealing their homesickness, their excitement, the loneliness. The acknowledgement of consuming this data or receiving this data from the students has been absolutely essential for me to plan what we do during the academic year. You would not see this from a Moodle data. You would not see it from a module feedback data. Showing and sharing emotions, creating space for students to be able to do this together has also created some sort of a sense of belonging, and students said to me that this is almost cathartic for them when they see everybody else's emotional curves or journeys, and they say, I wasn't the only one. I was the only one struggling with accounting. Oh, I feel so much better. It was you as well. And we learn to talk about emotions, which for any management graduate is essential for their future career, building the emotional intelligence. How beautiful data could be. Again, a snapshot of a module feedback. The last principle for me is the listening principle and what we do with all this data that the students share with us. So again, this sort of Moodle or the module feedback, yes, I did get a high score, but what do I read from this? I'm actually worried about these two people who suffered, but I'll never find out who they are. So that listening activity that we incorporated on the MSc Management, it doesn't only happen in the classroom. We put a lot of emphasis of taking students to different environments and appreciating our nature, our beauty, Lancaster, Lancashire, Cumbria, the Lake District, taking them to the place where they are located, engaging them with the environment, not just engaging them with our beautiful lecture theatres. Rydal Hall became a symbol for us of community building and understanding, and even though we always got wet and soaked completely through, we always believe that after this day, one day with your students in the nature can change the whole year forever, the whole academic year. During this one day, we also brought the notion to them of William Wordsworth, of the reflection and the importance of reflection, and the poem that we used to recite with each other in the class. There are in our existence spots of time. And we brought this little phrase throughout the year, reflecting about how our spots of times have evolved throughout our learning journeys. And again, credit to my student who sent me these two beautiful pictures from the campus. There will be dark spots of time, but there will also be the blue sky when they come through at the other side, on the other side. What is important also to close that loop, and this is a bit of fun that we did. So all that data you collect from the students, you mustn't leave it hanging out there just for yourself. This is not your information. You owe it to the students to tell them what you did with it or what you didn't do with it. So at the end of the course, we used to have exhibitions about you said we did, or you said we didn't, or you said and I have no clue what to do with it. So this one when students were talking about the intro week, but I'm going to show you this one, which I love, economics module. Economics module has always been the most problematic module on the MSc Management program, with almost 50% failures on the module, because some students were simply not quantitative enough to be able to cope with it. And we had a fantastic prof, Nick Snowden, who is now retired. And so, on the left you see that half of us have no business background. We really struggled with the module. This is what they told us. And half of us found it okay. So we said, okay, we know every good manager needs some econ. And I always say, it's just about supply and demand, really. But don't tell Nick. So we asked Nick, we said, Nick, we know this is difficult, and these students are not economic students. So can you redevelop the module? So in the conversation, not feeling attacked, in a dialogue with the students, we figured out what would be a better way to deliver that economics module. Nick got some extra time from his department and did a fantastic job together with the students in order to make it more digestible and find a way to be more inclusive in his delivery. The same happened with career support and so on. So this was just a little exhibition in the Hub Cafe where how we ended up our year celebrating things that we did, but also we didn't. Believe it or not, in 2019, I still had this problem with the dissertations at the end of the year and the students' emotion being totally devastating at the end when they are struggling with the dissertations, feeling abandoned, feeling just having to get on with it by themselves. And I still haven't solved it. So my project for next year is still cracking on with how could we make our dissertation period more engaging. But look at this data. If I told you that 50% of our students leave the program with these sort of feelings of despair, struggle, confusion, you will probably look at the stats and go, yeah, it's fine. If I show you this visual and you see all the journey maps ending down like this, I definitely don't want my students to leave the program with their last impressions of confusion, loneliness, or struggle. So, at the end of the day, the human-centered approach really opened my eyes to also how not to be perfect, how to co-create, be flexible, and constantly sort of try to work with the students in a different way. And this is one of the quotes from one of my students who said, yeah, at the end of the day, we are human beings. And this was after the session that we had together, and it was so heartwarming for them to say that, yes, we are humans, and we are treating each other as humans. And that well-being, the emotional as well as intellectual development is important. So next time you sit in the exam board and you see this, please also see this and this. And so what's with Tom's Trifle? So when Amanda asked me to prepare this talk for you, I was flicking with the cards that I gave you, and I drew this card. I drew a memory card. What has been incredibly rewarding to do. And the first thing that occurred in my mind was the sort of sharing of very personal stories. And I think it's because I also still feel homesick because I'm not from the UK, and I still think about my home and sometimes really want just that piece of Czech chocolate. And so I was thinking that really sharing these stories has been very, very defining in my practice, listening and giving as well. I'm not sure if Tom is online. He was maybe hoping to pop in. Tom, if you can hear me. You are here. Woo! Okay. So Tom is here. So Tom, what can you share with us?
Okay, so when you mentioned the Padlet, that reminded me, because I can remember what I put up back right at the start of the course, was this picture. I'm from Blackburn, and probably the main thing Blackburn is known for nowadays is our local football team, Blackburn Rovers. We're one of the most historic and successful clubs in English football after the big clubs, and so this was a picture I took just before the pandemic hit in 2020. So it showed basically by the time I was putting this up on the Padlet how much things had changed. So it's sort of good to be able to convey some of the things that are special to you in your hometown. I think that's one thing that Radka did really well with the Padlet, and it allowed us to share something that was close to our a little bit about our hometowns. And then, so this is the environment sort of I went into the MSc of. These are a few pictures I took around campus in December 2020. So as you can see, very quiet campus. and sort of it was a bit eerie at times walking around campus because not a lot was going on due to the pandemic.
Tom, you might just put it on slideshow. Can you put it on slideshow, because we still see. Cool. Okay, we could. Yeah, cool. Are we now on the Trifle?
Yes.
Yeah, you just need to flick down. Yeah. Yeah, cool.
Moving on. So this is the Trifle recipe I shared. We basically Radka put together a set like a Christmas celebration session on Teams, and shared her personal experience of Christmas in Czech Republic. That I decided to share sort of one of our family's equivalents. And this is the Trifle recipe we've done sort of as long as I can remember. And it's our traditional Welsh family Christmas Trifle recipe. And basically, so you start off with some quick gel and get that bubbling on the stove. And then you get some Swiss rolls from the supermarket. And you just these for anything specifically expensive, and you just chop them up into little rings, and then you pour your quick gel over it, slightly fork through it. And then once you've let that set in the fridge, you then do a bit of a custard layer with your bog standard burnt custard powder, and then a layer of cream on top. Now at this point you can put some Lotus biscuits or amaretto biscuits on top if you really wanted. And today you have one Christmas trifle, that is our standard spec Christmas trifle that we do. And that is how one portion looks that's how one portion looks in a nice glass bowl ready to eat. And and also at the end of this session, Radka found this picture. We both managed to find this picture when we were discussing this session. But I remember sharing this. Basically, I had these two little plushies on my desk as sort of my Christmas decorations. So I shared this on the Teams call to show the festivity was still going on despite the pandemic.
Thank you so much, Tom. Well, it's wonderful, isn't it? So poor students, they have to be subjected to my stories of fish swimming in the bath. And if you want to talk to me about it after the session, I will tell you. So that was Tom, and that was our Christmas session. And so these personal stories have still stuck in our memories. We still remember Tom's trifle. My students still remember the fish in the bath. And we just simply remember the human connections that we created, even though we were online at that time. So thank you very much for listening to me. If you liked what you've heard, we have a book coming up that has been co-edited with a colleague from the School of Law, Professor Michael Doherty, and another Lancaster graduate, Jean, about transforming higher education with human-centered design. We'll have a big celebration in autumn. The book will come out in September, and it will contain a lot of stories from around the world of different universities who've embraced the same practice as I have. And I wish you a beautiful conference. There will be spots of time during your conference, and I would also like to invite you to the reflection session tomorrow at 2 o'clock that is run by my colleagues, where you will be able to share your dark moments and hopefully some spots of light and sunshine. Thank you very much.